Welcome to Following Films, the podcast where we explore the art of filmmaking. In this episode, we're thrilled to have Adam Newman from Dreamscape Productions discussing the highly anticipated R-rated horror film, Round the Decay, set for theatrical release on January 31st. Round the Decay transports viewers to Newport's Valley, New Hampshire, where tourists and locals enjoy a seemingly off-season day. However, beneath the surface, a sinister secret begins to unravel. This film uniquely blends horror, comedy, and emotional depth, creating an engaging experience that captivates audiences. Join us as Adam shares insights into the film's intriguing plot, the balance between chills and comedic elements, and the emotional themes that resonate throughout the story. Discover how Round the Decay not only delivers spine-tingling thrills, but also explores the complexities of human relationships in a supernatural setting, as we dive deep into the creative process behind Round the Decay, revealing what makes it a standout film in the horror genre. Subscribe to Following Films. Hey, Adam.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
No, thanks for taking time out of your Friday to do this. I appreciate it.
Of course.
So how are you feeling right now? This is this labor of love. You're getting close to the finish line. How are things going right now?
I'm drowning. Yeah, no, it's been stressful. It's obviously been a very long year. I mean that in a good way. Obviously,
Yeah.
We're making this movie, and it's the coolest thing in the world. And the fact that it's not going to be playing in cinemas is, it's mind blowing. It's the childhood dream. But it's a lot, and like getting it prepared, and it's still not exactly ready for theaters yet. We're still just making the fine tunings. And then, of course, it's as if personal life says like, oh, you're busy? Well, you're drowning. Here's a baby, that type of thing. Just a lot of stuff going on.
How old's the newborn?
No, it's not mine. No,
okay.
I was doing Jim Gaffigan bit. I mean, my sister did just have a child, but there's a lot going on currently with my father's health is really, really poor.
Oh.
And so, yeah, I'm back and forth between talking with cinemas, and then I'm talking with the doctor, and he's now going to be on dialysis, and there's just a lot of that going on at once. And then I bought a house and got married in the same year too. So it's just been
why not?
Yeah, no, exactly. It's been a wild year, but I can't wait for the theatrical run for the movie because we're very, very proud of it.
Talk a little bit about that, because the fact that you have a theatrical run for a film this size, that this is an independent feature that you made here. A lot of films that are of your ilk, they don't get that chance to play in as many theaters that you are. How did that come together?
Well, stupidity probably. No, it's just, it's always been kind of like a lifelong dream. And I think what ended up happening was we saw one of our friends' films called Founders Day made it into the cinemas. Yeah, back in January of last year. And we got to see it. Our DP is the same DP from that. And then we talked a little bit to Eric, the director, about how he went about that. And we kind of started implementing his process and then kind of figured out our own in order to do it. And it's a lot of cold calling, and it's a lot of promoting yourself, and it's a lot of talking about the project. And I'm very lucky that it's not just me. We have a couple other people at our company that are doing the same thing. Mostly my executive producer, who's really an entrepreneur more so than he was a filmmaker until recently. And so we started with cold calls, and we used the little relationships that we had just for screenings and things like that. If you're very annoying and persistent, some people will start to listen sometimes. The silence is painful, and that's what you get most of the time. But we finally kind of broken through and understood that with theaters, they want more stuff, because the theaters, they're having trouble right now. And I think that what we've seen with things like Terrifier 3, which, whether it's for you or it's not, it's really helped pave the way for independent movies at a lower budget level. And so, it felt like right place, right time. And we said, let's cut out as many middlemen as we possibly can and see how far we can go with this. And we're doing well so far. I can't say which chains or anything like that yet, because we haven't officially, dotted I's and crossed T's, but we have gotten into chains as well as some smaller theaters. And so, yeah, hopefully it continue. I mean, it's going to be a busy 3 weeks as we get closer and closer, and as we finalize some of these deals. But Yeah, it's I do think that indie films have a chance now. Like if you really want to get into theaters, you got to buckle down, and it sucks because you got to do the thing that sucks the most, which is asking people for things, which is, like I said, is very difficult. But if you want to do it, now's the time to at least attempt it.
Well, it's funny because I'm 48 and I remember a time period, the sort of 90s independent film,
Hmm.
that was with Kevin Smith and all those guys. And there was this, you basically you make a film. That's where the business acumen comes in. Then you just get it into a festival and takes care of itself. That is not the world we live in anymore. I see wonderful films at festivals that never go anywhere, that just don't have that. You really have to be that much of a entrepreneur, as you said, boots on the ground, getting this thing, securing theaters, securing your own distribution, four walling these things that people that decided to go into chase art as a career, as a life, probably never thought they would be doing.
Yeah, you just brought up something that was really great, which is about those 90s, right? And you, like you said, with Kevin Smith and Richard Linklater and all
Yeah,
those
yeah, yeah.
guys. Yeah, and I think it was I always call it the lie that we were sold. And I'm a little bit younger, and so when I started really getting into filmmaking, which is back in like 2007,
Mhm.
um, everybody kind of just all the books said this. The limited resources online said like what you do is you make a short film or you make a feature and you bring it to a festival, and then somebody just says, "Here's a lot of money, go make these forever." And so we kind of thought that that was going to be the case for so long, and I think so many people have decided to go that route and still believe in that route. And maybe I'm crazy, or maybe just I got fed up with it. I still like festivals, but festivals are
Yeah,
really it's more that's more of a networking place for me now. It's more about meeting people that might end up working on my crew, or I can help them out in some way. There's not distributors go unless it's Can, and Can is accepting 1% of 1% of 1% of independent filmmakers now
oh
because
yeah.
it's become a showcase for understandably, like, oh, that's where Tarantino will premiere a movie. It's like, how are we ever going to compete with that? And so I do think that the process, though, is like filmmaking, which is it's creative problem solving. And we are in a very different boat. However, we're climbing a wall and we're just looking for any little crack we can slip into. And every now and then we go, all right, what if this spot in the wall looks weak? Let's punch through it and see if we can get in. And so we figured it was time to try. And luckily, I was very lucky that this is what I do professionally now, full time, which is awesome, and I get a salary for it, and it's great. But
Amazing.
yeah, no, it's I'm living the dream. I know it's going to fall apart at some point. But before I used to work in the golf industry. I ran a golf course for several years, and I just really started learning about how to talk to customers, and really it's about talking to people. And if you're most of the time, if you're nice to them, and also if you're persistent, and if especially if you're passionate, it's incredibly contagious. And so I think that I've just had to extend that beyond the films, and I'm very lucky that I'm good at the things I'm good at, which is I'm great at pre-production, and I'm good at talking to these people, and I'm just god awful at post production. And so I'm very lucky that I have somebody that's taking care of post, and I get to focus on the things that I'm good at. I let him focus on the things he's good at. And then we're lucky that we have this executive producer who's really obsessed with making movies and helping take care of that side of things. So, we got a good team, and I think, like I said, I think it's finally time. And what's going to happen is we're going to do this, and hopefully it starts to change the industry. And then in a snap, it's going to change again, and we're just
Of
all
course.
going to have to scramble and figure out how to get these things seen. It's the best time ever to get your movie seen, because you can just get it out there. The toughest thing is how do you find your audience, and yeah, how do you draw them in, especially when they're wading through more films these days. They're cheaper to make and they're everywhere.
Well, that getting that kind of attention on your film that is absolutely the challenge. It was the same thing was in festivals. It was how do you get people to show up in that room? And you can get into a festival sometimes, and then making people actually want to take the three movies they might see that day. Why is yours going to be one of the films they select? You have
Absolutely.
you're as a guy who's married and has two kids. Me and my wife maybe get to go out once a week. And I'm a
Hmm.
guy who's clearly obsessed with movies. We don't go to see a movie every time we go out. So is one of those date nights going to be put on your movie? Why should we do that? And that's just such
Right.
a challenge to get through that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the thing is you're always trying to work out something that an audience will be interested in, but at the same time, you're trying to be truthful. It's like it would be silly of me to go and make a period drama right now when I despise period dramas. Like it's just not my cup of tea. And so I'm lucky that my tastes are rooted very much in genre, which
Hmm.
is kind of popular right now. And I'm lucky that I got into horror. It was a little bit later in life, but horror speaks to me, and it's also a great place to tell human stories. And that now the question, you're right, is figuring out how do I get somebody like you who has kids and a wife, and you might only go to the movies once a month, and
Yeah.
am I going to be able to get you in? And the best way to do that is obviously to push yourself out there, try to bring in people that are going to draw people to you. And then, like I said, it's the same thing of selling yourself, marketing the thing with passion, and hopefully it starts to tickle somebody's fancy.
Well, I think there's something in what you were saying. There absolutely is. The
Mm,
something I always talk about is cynicism. And you can make a film that's cynical, but if it's made with cynicism, that
mm,
comes through. You can have a cynical message, that's fine. But if
mm,
you have to tell it with heart, you have to be passionate about the thing you're trying to say. You have to give a shit about the story. And I think that that's clear that you can tell the most bonkers story in the world,
mhm.
but you have to have everybody feel like they're on board for that. And that's again part of that salesmanship that you have to have as a director is you're selling everybody on your vision. If that's your
Mm.
costume design, if that's, you're selling the actors on it, you're selling your editor, you're selling, you said you hate post-production. You have to get the color correction right in during that
Exactly.
process to make sure that they understand what you want to see.
It's absolutely true. And I figured that out pretty early, and I think that I've never had a trouble speaking about what I'm interested in.
Good.
Even I used to be very, very shy, but never when it came to talking about my interests. And then I think what over time became very clear to me, and I remember back to my sophomore year social studies teacher talking about the good things about Julius Caesar, and one of them was that Caesar was really known for getting up and giving a speech to everybody, a really rousing speech, and then he'd be the first to ride out. And I kept thinking about that over time, and just thinking like, if I'm constantly showing up before everybody else does, and I'm staying later than everybody else does, they're gonna know I'm in on it.
Yeah.
And if somebody, they just have to think, if I can give 80% of that, a big part of this movie. And so I try to do that as much as possible, and also surround myself with people that are willing to put in a lot of themselves into it, because they're also passionate too. I think trusting in your craftsman is probably the greatest thing ever. I hate the word auteur. It disgusts me. I think it's a gross, dirty word that is used to service ego, and I think it's so silly. I wanted everybody to call me that when I was young. I wanted everybody to think I was a genius, but over time, you just start to realize how much experience and how much skill other people have. Everybody's gone through something that you haven't, and they're bringing that to the project. And it's always amazing when you see, I shot list every one of my movies, but when a DP comes to me and shows me a shot, and you go like, God damn it, that's so much better than anything I would have ever thought of. And you want to be the person who thinks of it, but I just wipe that away now and go like, no, that is a skilled craftsman that is using their skill to create 1% of the great thing that all of these people are going to get together and do.
Well, it's that leadership role where the
Mm,
people that are, you're the person that people are going to for, you're essentially answering questions all day is what your role is.
absolutely.
And so the thing they can't think is, I care about this more than the person I'm going to, because then you're dead in the water at that
Oh,
point.
absolutely. That's the big thing. And I think that I've gotten better at it. So when I was younger, it was just very hard to communicate all of
Yeah.
that. Your hormonal mess. And over time, you just start to learn, especially when you start to learn how to speak to actors and how to speak to crew, and everybody's looking for something different. You just have to be like liquid. And I think that what you just brought up is really, really true too, which is, I remember hearing Kevin Smith talk about it. And he said, really, all a director is doing is picking red or green. Someone comes to them and says red or green, and you just have to have the answer. And
So,
so many times that's what it is. And I give an answer, and I hope that I leave room for people to play. And anytime somebody has a better answer, I just go like, yes, let's do that
Chet,
thing.
take it. You get credit for it anyway. It
Yeah,
makes you look better.
exactly. Yeah, absolutely. It's absolutely true. And that's probably where the auteur stuff came in so long ago, is that a movie which just seems to have one voice because director seems to be that title. But like, how important an editor is in
Yeah.
making the movie. You know how important all these little things are. And like you said, you take the credit, which just means that you also have to be ready to take the blame when things go badly or whatever it is. But I also think, art is subjective. There is no such thing as good or bad. It's just good or bad to you. And so I try to take the good things and go like, wow, okay, we did something good. How do we expand on it? And then take the bad things and just go like, somebody didn't like it and it might just be their taste, but also let's find the kernel of good from that thing and how do we fix it for next time, or how do we expand upon it, or anything like that.
Well, it's the idea that every film is somebody's favorite movie. Like
Mhm.
even the filmmaker, they might not like it, but this piece of shit that they've made in their eyes, somebody in the world that's going to connect with them for whatever reason. And you've mentioned a couple times being shy, and it's
Mm,
funny that people that are attracted to film, it's something that is while you go do it in a group setting, you go into a theater, the rules around it are very isolating. It's, you get to experience this thing with all these people, but you need to shut up, pay attention, and keep to yourself and, try not to disturb those around you. So it's for people like me as well that are naturally introverts. That's something
mm,
I think that's, when you're younger, why well, for me personally, I never thought about this really until very recently, why I was
mm,
attracted to this particular art, that it was something that was, it was something I could do by myself. I loved reading. I loved writing. I loved all these things that were, it was isolationist really in their execution. But then film, when you start getting out in middle school and high school and making things on your own, you realize really quickly you have to start talking to people and engaging with others.
mm. That is the tough thing. I was always bad at group projects too,
Hmm.
and I think it was most of the time. I'm very bossy, and I've always been very bossy. I grew up with a bunch of neighborhood kids, and I was the oldest, and I'm an older sibling, and so I just kind of was always taking charge. And I think when I got to group projects, I was just afraid to take charge. Um, but eventually, you have to get over that, like you said. But it is to create a piece of art. Uh, and that is exactly what you just said, which is, I had never thought about it like that, but I go to the movies by myself most of the time. My
Yeah.
wife hasn't been to the only time she goes to the movies is to see mine. Um, she hasn't been since COVID. So most of the time I go by myself, and you're right. It
Same
is
here.
like, yeah, it's a very solitary thing. And I find it to be almost holy. Like I'm sitting in there, and when you're giving me a story, and if it's working, there's nothing. It's magic. It's the closest thing we can get to magic. It's the only time I'm able to forget who I am, which can just be lovely, and also experience things that I've never experienced. And also, I know it's made me a better person, because they're the Roger Ebert quote, right? They are empathy machines,
Yep.
and that's why they exist, to make you feel things and make you think about things. And then what I do love about them too is that, speaking of my father, who's got, who's in current bad, very very poor
Yeah.
health, but like the way that, and me and my dad are not big. I love you guys. So it's part of that generation. But
Yeah.
the way that we said that we cared about each other was he would go like, I remember when I was sick one day, sick, air quotes, from school, and he said like, I want you to watch this, and I just want you to talk to me about it. And it was Pulp Fiction. I was like
Hmm.
13. And I was like, okay, I watched it, and I called him at work and I said, like, what the hell was that? And he's like, I know, right? And I think that you can have these moments where you are internalizing these stories and stuff like that, and you're feeling these things deeply, but they're also like, it's how I connect with people. I like, if I want to talk to somebody and I want to know who they are, I go like, hey, would you watch this movie? And then we have a discussion about it. We have a film club where we use it as a way to talk to each other and talk about things. And then it also starts bringing up what's going on in the world, or
Yeah.
why was I feeling something in this movie when I've never experienced anything that somebody has gone through like that, And so they're simultaneously like the most lonely and isolated things you can do, but they're also the most social things you can do. And I kind of love that just like the art form, which is sound and picture and time, which is just not used in anything really of all those elements. It's just like it's very, very complex and everything all at once.
Well, your dad's a very smart man, because
Yeah.
he's recommending films and having you watch them on your own time. He's not an asshole like I am, who I will show people something and want to sit there and watch them watch it and see how they're reacting to the thing. And that is the worst experience you can possibly have watching a movie. But I know I've done that to multiple people in my life where, my wife finally called me out and she's like, I don't want you staring at me every 2 seconds when something's about to happen. Just let me go through this thing.
I'm so surprised that you're willing to do that because I'm also a little bit terrified of that. Like watching something with somebody can be very scary, especially if you're like, hey, this thing speaks to me and I think it will speak to you. And then you watch on their face as you're like, oh no, it's gone wrong. I just misjudged this situation so badly. And then they say the dreaded, like, I have to go to the bathroom. And you go to pause it. And then, and then they go like, no, don't bother pausing it. And then you go, I'm ruined. So,
Or they're looking down at their phone or
oh,
anything like that. It's hell. It's absolute hell.
if somebody looks at their phone during a movie, they should be instantly arrested. I stand by that.
Well, there's like these certain types of films that all films that you have to get into the motion of them. Oh God, why am I spacing the name of the movie now? It's last year indie horror film, something violence. Not Valley of Why Am I? So you follow the serial killer, and it's this quiet
Oh,
movie.
yeah. In a violent
Violent
nature.
Nature. In a
Yeah,
Violent
yeah, yeah.
Nature. Yes, that's
Yep.
it. I was thinking Valley of Violence. And I'm like, that's not it. That's
Sure.
years before. But anyway, yes. So in Violent Nature, you're following around a serial killer in that whole movie, and you're just hanging out by his side, and you watch that at home, and it's so quiet. It's like watching, Thin Red Line or any like a
Yeah.
Malick movie where it
Yep.
has these long, long periods where there's no dialogue and you're just watching scenery.
Yeah.
And it builds attention in a theater. You have to be absorbed in it. And the ending of that film,
Mm.
it just doesn't work if you have a phone in front of you. I think
Mm.
you could very easily say, well, I'm not missing anything because there's no dialogue or anything. So I can
So
just
long.
tune out. And then you're like, what was that thing I just watched? And you missed the whole thing.
Yeah, no, I'm so glad you brought that up. I haven't seen In Violent Nature, but I do think that about film, and I hate this idea. I hate that people keep talking about second screen.
Second screen. Oh
Oh my
God.
God. And it's
Fuck
like
no.
it's so gross. It really is because ultimately when I make a movie, the picture is king. That's the most important thing.
Yeah.
And I think it's the thing that draws the most emotion out of you. I think that watching an actor's face is the thing that can draw the most empathy from you. So like if you're skipping out on that, you're missing out on the entire experience. And especially how I'm trying to make movies. I try to make everything either as funny or as impactful or whatever it may be, just based off of what the image is and trying to avoid doing it with dialogue. Obviously dialogue is a huge weapon as well, but the picture matters. How somebody is framed matters. What you do or don't do with the camera matters. How a shot connects to another shot matters. We're also really smart. All of us are really smart viewers.
Yeah.
I hate when people say that the audience is dumb. I hate that. Yeah, sometimes they can get a little bit confused, but it's probably on you. And if you put two images next to each other, it's like a universal language. That's what I love about it. It's like, if you cut to a close up when somebody has just said something, you go, oh my God, that means something to that
Yeah.
character. Something was learned about it. And you don't think about it consciously, but you feel it. You feel it completely. And you go like, I know everything that's going on in this conversation just because of one cut to a close up. That's incredible. And if you're on your phone, you're missing everything. And it's worth, if you're going to be on your phone, fine, whatever, but never, ever afterwards say like, I didn't like that movie. Oh, you're killing me if that's the case.
Well, okay, you bring up a really interesting point, and I want to get into specifics of your film, but
Sure.
I love this. It's this idea that somehow people who know more about film, if you're a filmmaker, there's almost you need somebody who doesn't know anything, who's never taken a film class, somebody who, when you used to go back to people's homes and they owned 10 movies, and when we used to have DVD players, and two of them were, they were American Pie movies or whatever. It was people that don't know anything, but they understand film. They
Mm-hmm.
do. They understand what the story was and what they're trying to convey. If
Mm-hmm.
you lose that person, it's not because their lack of intelligence, it's actually your lack of
Absolutely.
intelligence in understanding the audience that you're trying to speak to. And
Mm-hmm.
so, and if you get too far up your own ass and you are making something that's so technical that you're losing the story, I think that's a problem as well. Now, some movies need to be deconstructed, and they're by design. You have to sit with
Mm-hmm.
them for a while, and there's
Of
no
course.
easy answers to them, and they're not for everybody. And I love stuff like that. I
Mm-hmm.
absolutely love ambiguous films that do take a little bit of work on the audience, but there's a lot of people that appreciate that too. And then there's other
Mhm.
times when I want Den of Thieves. I
Yeah.
want something that's just completely empty and I can just a
Sure.
throwaway, and that's fine.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You are so right. And I always think that, it's like, again, it's all subjective.
Yeah.
Um, However, if something isn't working and people are pointing at it, I'll just point to our last movie before Round the Decay. We had this movie called Everwinter Night, and we made it for a much smaller budget, and we got it out there, and then we started hearing some reviews, and we got kicked around quite a bit with them. And it is what it is. It's not a horror movie. I mean, it is, but it's mostly chasing Amy with a monster at the end, but we started learning based off, every now and then someone's going to be like, I don't like this character. I don't like this. I don't like that. And that's all personal. But if everybody keeps saying it's 10 minutes too long, it's 10 minutes too long. It's one of those things where you can start to look at consensus and start to go like, okay, let's go back and let's figure out what we would have done differently had we been in this place. Why is it feeling this way? And oftentimes it's because you're too close to the thing. I'm trying to get to this place where, especially because I'm a writer director and I always want to be a writer director, just not being precious. And
Yeah.
anytime my editor talks to me and says, like, hey, I think we can get rid of it, the answer is if I can't find any reason for it to stay other than my ego, then it needs to go. If it's not advancing the story, or if we've said it before, that happened in Round the Decay. We cut two scenes that were back to back. And what sucks is they were good scenes. They
Yeah.
are good scenes by themselves. However, one of the characters almost says it later. And also, hey, if we remove the other scene that's the better scene, it actually makes the movie flow a little bit better. The scene still can be a cool scene. It can still exist in my mind. It can exist on a deleted scenes of a Blu-ray, but ultimately you have to respect the audience. You have to respect how smart they are. You have to make sure that you're taking them along for a ride. You can't just be sitting there thinking like, yeah, but I think it's cool. Yeah, but I think it's so cool. That's not going to work. Again, it's always about the audience. I make the claim that every movie that's ever been made is for me. Personally, that's it. It's very selfish.
Yeah.
However, the only movies that aren't are my own. They're all for the rest of you. It's the movie I want to see, and that's what I like about Round the Decay. It's a movie that I would have loved to go see on a Friday at the theater. It feels perfect for me for that. Um, However, what it is now, I have no say. I don't get to tell you what it's about. You get to watch it. You get to choose if you like it or you don't, and what it's about, and all that type of stuff. Because I've made the movie so that I can communicate with all of you and saying this is how I feel about X, Y, Z, and you can go like, yeah, I'm into that, or no, it's not for me.
Well, there's this idea in your film of kind of dealing with the literal and figurative monsters of your past and the things that you're bringing into the world right now. And you're sort of literalizing those things. But I feel like there is an interpretation of your film that could be made without the monster element. The story you're trying to tell isn't dependent upon a monster, that you're just taking that word literally at that point. Would that be an accurate sort of representation of it?
Yeah, but don't tell the horror fans. Yeah, no, it's really true. What I love about genre is it just gives you an opportunity to talk about things. And yeah, of course I wanted to make a monster movie, but the very original idea was a cosmic horror. It was different. It didn't necessarily matter what the monster was at that time. And when I sat down to write this, it really started becoming about purging what had just happened to me in a relationship, and trying to forgive myself and forgive them, and hopefully they're trying to do the same thing. And I think that this story has a lot of that in it. I think what's great about monster movies or about genre is that you and me right now, whatever level of people we are, we're putting something off. We're putting off
Yeah.
coping with something or dealing with something. And when you stick a monster into a movie, you make them deal with it now. And that's what I kind of liked about it. It's like if the monster wasn't in the movie, Kenzie, our lead, would not go through the journey that she needs to go through in order to become the person that she needs to be, not wants to be, but needs to be. And so it just feels like a natural fit. But I'm glad that you said that, because it makes me feel like maybe, just maybe, the emotional core of the movie comes through even
Well,
without the genre elements.
as somebody who I've been married for 15 years now, but there
Mhm.
was somebody I was engaged to before. And
Sure.
so it's what happened in the past is actually what prepared me for who I am now. I'm incredibly happy with the life I have. There's no regrets, nothing like that. But I look back at that person that I was in my 20s, and
Mm.
it's a little bit embarrassing. I'm
Oh,
not proud of that person that I was. And so there's a little bit of shame around that. And so it feels like there is that element in this film that I actually connected to, that I think you are dealing with that element of the moving on and getting sort of your house in order in a sense, because this is really preparation for the next, preparing to be sort of a more fully realized version of yourself.
well, thank you for saying that. That's so lovely, and I completely agree with you about looking back at yourself. It's so funny because the person I am right now, I keep thinking to myself like, I've done it. I'm complete. I'm the best version I'll ever be. And in 10 years, I'm going to look back and be like, I can't believe what a fool I was. I'm so much bigger than I used to be, and I feel the same way about my 20s. And a lot of the stuff that's said in the movie between there's a relationship between Zach and Kenzie, and hopefully people see the movie and really dive into it. But like that's both me and her, both characters.
Yeah.
I said the lines from both of them. She said the lines from both of them, and so yeah, it's a great way to purge through get through that thing and become the person that you can potentially be. But at the same time, hopefully it's something that resonates with a lot of people and they go like, I've been through that before, and like I know what that's like, and I remember the pain, and I remember, and like, have I come out of that pain? Have I dealt with that? Start are you still dealing with it? And hopefully at least they can go, oh, I feel seen, which is the biggest thing when it comes to art. Is I'm just reaching my hand out and saying like, do you see me? And hopefully you reach back and go, yeah, no, I see you.
Well, even if it's not your personal experience, I think
Mm,
when you hear somebody or see somebody telling their truth and speaking to their experience, that resonates. There's something, and it could be somebody that's turning this into something wildly different, that it's not
mm,
as direct a one-to-one correlation. But if you're telling it in an honest way, I think that that's when there's a truth underneath that can come out from time to time. And I think that's, kind of goes back to there's this Mark Twain thing that he would talk about. He can't remember the exact quote, but it's something along the lines of, "When I was 18, my dad was the dumbest human being I'd ever met. By the time I was 23, he was the most intelligent human being I'd ever met. How do you get so
mm.
smart in 5 years?" And so
Right.
it's that idea of perspective and how we
Of
constantly
course.
change and grow. And and you kind of almost quoted, I think, Bruce Lee earlier. We said, be water, and
Right.
that's the thing. That's what we want to go towards. Is that we want to be. We're so when we're young, we're so hard and steadfast in our beliefs, and
Mm,
as you get older and you get more calloused, you somehow do become a little bit more forgiving, hopefully, and
mm.
understanding, because you see that, oh, I don't know shit. And
Yeah. Oh,
so
yeah.
eventually I'm hoping that's what happens. I'm really hoping I look back at my 40s and think how I had it all wrong. And so I'm looking forward to the next decade and what that brings.
I'm feeling the same way too, and I'm lucky that I do believe every year that I am alive is the best year of my life, and I
Yeah.
think it's because I found some perspective, and because I realized that I don't need to be X, Y, or Z, and also I realized I'm not X, Y, or Z anymore, which is great. And that's what I love about movies too, is that like they're talking about this type of stuff. Like as you were just talking about that right there, I just kept thinking like that's cinema, baby. Like it's just
Yeah.
such a it's just it is what it is, and it's talking about the human condition. And if you can have people have, I want Round the Decay to work on multiple levels. Hopefully, I really want the emotional stuff to come through. And if it doesn't, right, sometimes it just won't because you just won't connect with it. At least
Th-
I hope you have a fun time at the movies.
That's what
Yeah.
I was going to say. There's
Yeah.
enough. There's comedy here that will absolutely work for people
Sure.
that are. I
Yeah.
think there's horror that will work for people. So I think there is an emotional heart at the center of it, but it's not. While it's the thing that I gravitated towards, it's not overt. It's not something that's overly hammered home in a way that's on a soapbox by any means. But it is something that I think people will connect with. So I think that they could. But that's the amazing thing about film, that it is something that
Mhm.
you could watch wildly different films. It's almost like a litmus test where you could look at this and it'll tell more about the individual, I think, than the actual film itself, where, that I got into the sort of emotional side of a story like this says more about me than I just, I'm always looking for that. I'll watch something as crappy as The Burning and I'll try to find the emotional truth in it. But that's just my problem, not yours.
I don't, well, yeah, but I don't think I think that's what's so great about it. And that's what I love about movies. And it's so fun because I had a podcast yesterday and we talked about it, and they really liked the movie, which is anytime anybody likes the movie, a huge, Exactly.
Yeah,
No, it's like, okay, thank God. Because whether or not, like, no matter what happens, it hurts if someone doesn't like it.
of
You put
course.
yourself out there. But they said like, man, this is a Friday night movie. Like I would have brought this with my buddies and we would have had popcorn. I'm like, good. That's what you got out of the movie.
Yeah.
And what I love about these things is they are just so subjective and that we can all have different experiences with them based off of what we're trying to bring to them. Also, what mood we're in when we're watching them,
True.
and what I love is that it's so varied and so wide. And, my buddies, of course, every now and then, oh, you're contrarian or you're pretentious or whatever it is, which is all in good fun. But it's because like I don't like The Shining, and I really don't like that movie. And
How dare
everybody
you?
else,
How
yeah.
dare?
But this is the thing too. And then I will fight you to the death that Joe Dirt is a good film. I believe that. And
Sure,
so,
there's room for
yeah,
both. You
yeah,
can
exactly.
enjoy Joe Dirt. There's nothing
Well,
wrong with that.
and that's what I like. Is like there is no consensus that is real. They're all here for discussion, and it's always changing. And I recently rewatched Before Sunrise from
Yeah.
Linklater, which I love Linklater, and I cannot believe how little it worked for me. And I think it's because I was like, oh, I aged out of it. But then I watched Before
You have to watch
Sunset, and
all
I'm like,
three.
yeah, because you watch Before Sunset, and I go like, what? This is the most romantic movie that's ever been made. And then you watch Before Midnight, and you're like, oh my God, that's my life. And it's like, but back when I first watched it, I wanted to be Ethan Hawke from Before Sunrise, and
We all
I
did.
changed. Yeah, exactly, because he's the coolest guy in the world, and you just want
Yeah.
to meet a girl on a train and marry her. It's crazy how much you change when you change your relationship with the movie can change too. And so I always love to go back and then find something new. This is why like Children of Men is my favorite movie of all time because I every time I go back to it, it gets better. And like maybe it's because I've changed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've recognized something different in the movie, whatever it is. It just every time I go like, oh no, it's certainly the best movie of all time. And then the next time I go like, it's even better than that.
Well, when you're a young man and you watch a film like that, you could be. I love the sort of the dystopian sort of the outlook on life that it has. That is a very cynical film and its messaging. But then when you get older, you could look at it and see it as a very hopeful film, and you could be just floored by the heart that's in that movie. So, the art hasn't changed, but it's Breakfast of Champions. I'm currently rereading. I think I've read it like 10 times. I swear to God, that book is a different book every time I pick it up. It's never the same book.
Yeah,
So.
it's so true what you just said about like Children of Men, because Children of Men first, it's like you said, it's the apocalyptic thing, and then after that, it's a filmmaking thing. Like,
Yeah,
man, this is physical filmmaking, and then all of a
dude.
sudden, the most recent. Oh yeah, what a
Yeah,
so well shot. And then you get to oh, what's going on in the background, all the symbolism there, and then the most recent time I watched it, I cried when Michael Caine dies in the movie. Spoiler, everybody, but like. And I had never in the past and devastated by it. And
yeah.
so it just changes and changes. And I'm a reader, but I do read the book In Watermelon Sugar every year by Richard Brodigan. And I have no idea what it's about. I still have no idea. I've read it 20 times. I have no idea, but it makes me feel things. And every time I read it, it makes me feel a completely different thing. And it's so and also that I don't understand. I kind of love that about it.
That's the that's always the best art, and even the worst art is going to
Mhm.
change as you grow up. And
Oh,
I
certainly.
guarantee you, some of those movies that we threw away when we were teenagers, the video store stuff that was completely disposable. You could go back and watch it now, and you could pick up on the heart of these 20 people that made this thing on a shoestring budget with nothing but
Absolutely.
just pure love of trying to put on a show, and that there could be something in there that you dismissed at the time that now that'll resonate a little bit deeper. So yeah, it's always a good idea to give things a second day in court for me personally.
Absolutely. And I think also I wish everybody understood how damn difficult it is to make them. And
So,
so
so
it's like the fact that you can make anything that's even terrible is insane.
it's
Like
a minor miracle that it's
yeah.
watchable on any level.
Oh, certainly. And I, still see it now and be like, oh man, I know what they were going for, but they lost it on the way. And I totally feel for them, which is why I try to be positive about everything now. And there are times when I see film my peers and I really do not like them. But I will go to them after they'll go, what did you think? And I will say, I loved this, that, and the other. Three things from the movie that even if I didn't like the movie, it's like I loved how you showed this. I really love this performance, and I love. And then maybe even next time I see it, I go like, I was wrong, and like the three things that I loved, there's five more things that I love in this thing. And if you continue to look at it in a positive way, rather than what folding your arms and going like, what do you got for me, buddy? Then I think that you can have a more positive experience, and then you can be way more open to a lot of art.
Dude, well, congratulations on the film. Could not agree with you more.
Thank you.
When will people be able to see this? Where should we send people to check out to get more information about Round the Decay?
Okay, so dreamscapeproductions.com is where our tickets are currently for pre-purchase, but we will be in theaters January 30th and 31st. We'll be hitting cinemas all across the country, places I know for sure we are playing in. We have some places in Boston, some places in Florida, some places in Oklahoma, some places in Michigan. These people have all agreed to, as in we have signed contracts and the tickets are currently available. Keep up to date though. Adam tickets especially, you can save to a watch list. We're about to do our marketing campaign with them. And so we are expecting to be in hundreds of theaters across the country.
Awesome. Well, congratulations, man. I can't wait for people to check this out.
Time enough to figure you out. Time enough to write this down. Wish me luck, give me hope. So I fall one more time, and I'll say I can't save you. Fell down into the bathroom, fade out into the background. Get up and fall down again. So what, I know you'll give up. Why can't you prove me wrong? There's just too much time. Why can't you prove me wrong? No way to make you mine. Why can't you prove me wrong? Nothing for each other. You'll be fine. Once more waking up face down. Two lives never to connect. You can't live there. Blocked out, shut up. So I fall one more time, and I'll say I can't save you. Why can't you prove me wrong? There's just too much time. Why can't you prove me wrong? No way to make you mine. Why can't you prove me wrong? Nothing for each other. You'll be fine. Save you now. Save you. 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 My voice cracked.